Hillmans Transport WHSC Training. Speed Management Induction Chain of Responsibility. During this program, you will be introduced to Hillmans Transport Speed Management policies and procedures as it applies to you, a relevant worker. We will discuss the fit within the chain of responsibility legislation. We'll also discuss vehicle speed, stability and a number of other subjects. This program is not designed to teach you new approaches to driving, but to allow you to understand and abide by the policies and procedures as they apply to your working environment while at Hillmans Transport. The reason for this is to ensure that all employees are fully aware of the speed management policies and procedures and what is expected of you when you're in control of one of our vehicles. At the end of this session, you will be provided with the information to enable you to fully comply with Hillmans Transport Speed Management policies and procedures. In line with this is the requirement to maintain a driver's logbook in accordance with the fatigue management legislation. Remember that while you are driving for Hillmans Transport under our BFM or AFM guidelines, a driver must at all times carry their letter of authorization, a copy of their fatigue management training certificate, and a copy of Hillmans Transport industry accreditations. At the end of this session, you'll be required to complete an assessment. The pass mark for this assessment will be 100%. In any organisation, responsibilities are divided between the employer and the worker. Each group has defined responsibilities with regard to work health and safety and training. These are established in various pieces of legislation, including work health and safety legislation, chain of responsibility legislation, etc. What is the chain of responsibility? It is a concept used in Australian transport legislation to place legal obligations on all parties within the transport supply chain or across the transport industry generally. You are part of the supply chain if your role falls into one of the following categories: consigner, receiver, loader, unloader, scheduler, operator, manager, etc. The transport company must ensure that schedulers do not require drivers to exceed the speed limit, delivery times do not put pressure on drivers to exceed the speed limit, contingency plans are developed to deal with scheduling issues and problems with meeting deadlines, drivers are able to report delays or other problems, vehicle speed limiters, if installed, are functioning and maintained within the manufacturer's requirements. The driver must ensure that all speed limits are observed at all times. Safe and responsible driving behaviours is demonstrated at all times when in control of a vehicle. The scheduler must ensure that schedules do not require drivers to exceed the speed limit. Delivery times do not put pressure on drivers to exceed the speed limit. Contingency plans are developed to deal with scheduling issues and problems with meeting deadlines. Drivers are able to report delays or other problems. The loading manager must ensure that loading and unloading arrangements do not require the driver to speed. Times and delays are regularly reviewed. Bottlenecks are identified and any problems are resolved promptly. The consigner and consignee must ensure that no pressure is put on the driver to exceed the speed limit. Appropriate time is factored for the job to be completed without requiring the driver to speed. Contingency plans are developed to deal with scheduling issues and problems with meeting deadlines. Contracts and schedules include speed compliance and monitoring issues. Hillmans Transport defines two types of driver, the positive and the negative driver. We'll now briefly discuss Hillmans' definition of a positive driver. Hillmans Transport defines a positive driver as a person who is applying natural speed management techniques by being aware of the vehicle and their operating environment, who has positive operating control of the vehicle. To maintain safe and effective control of the vehicle while it is moving, the driver needs to maintain conscious control of what they are doing to control the vehicle and their surroundings at all times. In other words, you're maintaining situational awareness or consciously aware of what is going on around you, and should something happen, you can respond in the most appropriate manner. Example of a positive driver: you're driving a 90 km an hour, a B double, and you notice another vehicle approaching from a side road. In this situation, you would be aware of the approaching vehicle and have begun to make a conscious decision on their possible intentions. Are they going to try and beat you to the road junction? Either way, you are prepared and have begun to prepare yourself and the vehicle. An Another example of a positive driver, you're in control of a quad combination and are approaching the crest of a hill and you begin to descend. To prevent an overrun, you begin to gear down to moderate the vehicle's speed with a minimal use of brakes. You are maintaining situational awareness and demonstrating that you have positive control of the vehicle. Either way, you are aware of the potential hazards and risks and preparing to respond accordingly. We'll now discuss the negative driver. Hillmans Transport defines a negative driver or a high-risk driver as one who, while driving, does not maintain situational awareness or control of the vehicle and as a result allows the vehicle to overrun or worse, resulting in an accident. An example of a negative driver, you suddenly realise you have travelled more than 200 kilometres and you're not aware of the trip. This could be a sign of fatigue. You are driving at 90 kilometres an hour in control of an AB triple. You reach around to get a drink from the truck fridge. As you lean across and down, your body moves the centre line of gravity down and to the left. As such, you inadvertently pull the steering wheel to the left to cause the vehicle to veer off course. When you realise what has happened, the wheels have left the road, dropped off the shoulder. As you suddenly correct or overcorrect, you cause the middle trailer to roll over. This is high-risk driving. Another example of a high-risk driver, you're approaching the crest of a hill as you begin to descend. As you are not in full conscious control of the vehicle, you have not selected the appropriate gear for the downhill run, and as such you are unable to prevent an overrun. By the time the vehicle reaches 100 kilometers an hour, the overspeed alarm is activated and you are now begin to bring the vehicle under control. At this point, it is too late. Hillmans Transport IVMS has notified the operations manager and compliance officer of this non-compliance, who are demonstrating high-risk driving techniques. Controlling speed. Hillmans Transport employs two methods of speed management, the first being the driver themselves and the second is having the vehicle speed limited to the engine management system. Use the gears and brake together. Brake early and gradually. Where possible, brake when your vehicle is in a straight line. Allow for the weight of the load. Brake according to the road surface. Ease off the brakes as the vehicle slows down. Remember, a sharp or harsh braking manoeuvre can result in a rollover. Always test your brakes after driving through deep water, as wet brakes do not perform well. We'll now discuss low-risk driving. As a professional driver and the public face of Hillmans Transport, you are expected to display low-risk driving at all times when in control of a Hillmans Transport vehicle. Only drive when you are alert. Respect other road users and know how to control your vehicle. Driving is never risk-free. You should always aim to drive low risk. A low-risk driver has good observation, speed management and road positioning skills. Drive at a speed that is within the speed limit of the vehicle or combination you are in control of. When you see the potential hazard, slow down and prepare to stop. If you cannot see at least 5 seconds ahead of you, you must slow down. Slow down on wet, icy or gravel roads. Speed limiters. The engine speed is controlled through the programming of the engine management system. This allows for the vehicle to reach maximum revs or speed while gearing up, but once you have reached the predetermined speed, it will not allow you to go past this point. To warn a driver of an overspeed, two systems are or can be activated. The first being an internal alarm or buzzer. The second is the engine brake will begin to be applied. The second component of the speed limiter is you, the driver. By being aware of what is going on around you and selecting the correct gear or ratio for the task, you should be able to maintain a safe speed. For example, you should aim to go up a hill at the same speed as you would go down the hill. The system for speed management employed at Hillmans Transport is a two-stage system, each relying on the other to be 100% effective. If one part of the chain in the system is inefficient or ineffective, you cannot expect the rest of the system to function at peak levels. Hillmans Transport vehicles are speed limited to the following: B-double combinations 100 km an hour, road train combinations 90 km an hour. Speeding. Speeding is one of the major killers on Australian roads. During 2013, there were 47 fatalities on Queensland roads as a result of speed radar crashes, representing more than 1 in 5 road deaths in Queensland. More than 1,000 or more people are killed either year. As we are aware, any driver detected breaching the speed limit can expect a monetary penalty and a loss of demerit points. The following list outlines the penalties with associated demerit points and monetary penalties. If you are travelling at less than 13 kilometres an hour over the speed limit, you can expect a $151 fine and 1 demerit point. At least 13 kilometres an hour above the speed limit, but no more than 20 kilometres an hour over the speed limit, attracts a fine of $227 and 3 demerit points. More than 20 kilometres an hour above the speed limit, but no more than 40 kilometres an hour over, attracts a fine of $379 and 4 demerit points. More than 30 kilometres an hour over the speed limit, but no more than 40, attracts a fine of $531 and 6 demerit points. More than 40 kilometres an hour above the speed limit, attracts a fine of $1,062 and 8 demerit points and 6 months loss of licence. If you are caught twice in a year for the same offence, the demerit points on your licence will double from 4 to 8, from 6 to 12, from 8 to 16. Be advised, Hillmans Transport does not condone speeding under any circumstances. Any driver found to be speeding may face disciplinary action, which may include termination of your employment. Hillmans Transport Speed Management Policy. Hillmans Transport have 2 types of rated vehicles. They are B-double and road train rated. The maximum speed these vehicles are permitted to travel on any highway are: for a B-double configuration, 100 km an hour. For a road train rated vehicle, 90 km an hour. Speed management compliance. The driver performance for controlling vehicle speed is carried out in conjunction with a daily driver work diary review in comparison with the relevant line haul report downloaded from MT Data, our vehicle tracking systems. The table below details the actions from management upon a breach of the speed management policies and procedures. Breaches. Speed breaches are identified from speed cameras, mobile police units and notice to produce records and the data tracking records. Any speed breach will be investigated by Hillmans Transport Management. A speed breach is identified where: 1. The driver is confirmed to be operating the vehicle at the time of the breach. The speed limiter is functional within the vehicle. Exemptions from breaches are: where the driver breached to prevent damage to a person, property or the environment. The vehicle driven had faulty brakes or a faulty speedometer at the time. Consequences for speed breaches. For offences over 100 km an hour, a critical breach is determined at 15 km an hour over the limit. The first offence, immediate termination of employment. A serious breach is one that's deemed to be 15 to 10 km an hour over the limit. First offence, first and final warning. Second offence, the employee will be dismissed. A moderate breach is a breach defined as less than 10 km an hour above the speed limit. First offence, discussion with the employee. Second offence, written warning. Third offence, the employee will be dismissed. For breaches under 100 km an hour, a critical breach, 15 km an hour over the limit. First and final warning for the first offence. Second offence, termination of employment. A serious breach between 10 and 15 km an hour above the speed limit. First, discussion with the employee. Second offence, first and final warning. Third offence, the employee will be dismissed. A moderate breach of less than 10 km an hour. First offence, review the road where the breach occurred. Second offence, discussion with the employee. Third offence, warning. Fourth offence, the employee will be dismissed. Crash avoidance. Crash avoidance space is a space required to avoid or reduce the risk of a crash from occurring. As well as being created, the crash avoidance space must also be maintained and protected. This is a conscious and continuous process that requires both awareness and skill. Heavy vehicle drivers in particular need to be aware and have good understanding of the crash avoidance space concept and the various ways in which it can be applied. A low-risk driver maintains a crash avoidance space completely around the vehicle. The crash avoidance space is managed by adjusting the vehicle's speed and road positioning. To determine the crash avoidance space in front of the vehicle, you need to consider two key factors: reaction time and response time. We'll cover reaction time now. Reaction time is the time the driver needs to observe their surroundings and see the information, orientate yourself to the conditions, decide on appropriate response, act to initiate that response. Response time, generally a minimum of 2 to 3 seconds, is needed to respond. In many situations, braking may be the only possible response. Swerving is rarely appropriate and can result in a more severe crash, for example a head-on collision. A total of at least 4 seconds between you and the vehicle in front for the crash avoidance space is needed to react and respond to a situation. You may need even longer in poor conditions such as rain or darkness, or when affected by fatigue. The 4-second gap can be used when following another vehicle or if there is a potential for something to move into your crash avoidance space, like other traffic or road users.
Basically, the key for me was that I noticed something on this video footage. What I realised is that the driver didn't know he was about to roll. Even when the crash was already underway, he still didn't know. Not until it was too late anyway. How did I know he didn't know? It was the brake lights. When you watch the footage, you can see that the brake lights don't come on until the trailer is already all the way over. I thought, this is pretty amazing. Here's this guy, an expert driver. He's testing load restraints and he had no idea his trailer was rolling over. His brief was to push as hard as he thought he could go to test the load restraints. And he was doing everything right, but he still rolled.
I always had this idea that maybe if the trailer went, well, hopefully it'll leave me and the truck sitting up the front okay. But it's not working like that. So yeah, interesting, very interesting. Frightening too.
When we first started investigating this, we come across the popular belief that the prime mover always went first. We're showing here now that the trailer always goes first. You can see on the video the trailer builds up all this torque, and then in a very short time, in a split second, it flipped the prime mover over, really viciously whipped it onto its side. I suddenly realised maybe it's not actually the driver's fault every time a truck rolls over. Maybe there's a whole lot more to it than just that.
Doesn't matter how much experience you've got or how new you are. I'm definitely not a cowboy. I play by the rules, but it can happen to anyone. Yeah.
They're the ones that worry me, that are capable people, not careless and not reckless, but over the truck goes.
The effect of speed on cornering stability, brake conditions and impact forces increases as the square of the speed increases. This means, for example, that cornering forces don't just double when the vehicle's speed doubles, they increase by 4 times. This effect is highlighted in the figure below. The arrow in the illustration representing the overturning forces of a truck travelling at 30 km an hour into a corner. If the same truck is driven through the same corner at 60 km an hour, the overturning forces will be 4 times higher, represented by the arrow in the middle of the illustration. If the truck is now driven through the same corner at 90 km an hour, the overturning forces will be 9 times higher as that in the second illustration. The speed squared effect has a dramatic effect on impact on vehicle stability and controllability. Gravity creates a force that, in simple terms, attracts everything towards the centre of the Earth. The force is measured as a weight. A person weighing 90 kilos and a truck weighing 15,000 kilos are both attracted towards the centre of the Earth with the same level of acceleration. In this case, the unit of gravity is called 1g, or gravity. The centre of gravity. Every object has a centre of gravity, the point at which or around which the object is balanced in all directions. The higher the centre of gravity, the more unstable the object, such as a semi-trailer, becomes. The closer to the ground, the more stable the object is. In vehicle terms, if the load is not centred across its width, the stability will be reduced when cornering. If the load is not balanced correctly along the width of the vehicle, wheel lock-up during braking becomes more likely. We can also add another factor here, that being any sudden force from braking, cornering, etc. has a potential to shift the load, and as a result of the load shift, or move the centre of gravity to a point where a rollover is likely. This can even occur when travelling on a straight line. For example, a vehicle cuts across your front, you have to apply emergency braking, evasive manoeuvring. This sudden acceleration or deceleration, combined with the weight of the load and the sudden excessive repositioning of the vehicle, can shift the load's centre of gravity.
The challenge for anyone who's got a liquid load is you can't lash down liquid. Our trucks aren't full for a lot of the time. You couple that with the fact that you're going around corners and all of a sudden you have a load on board which can be up to 42 tonne, rapidly pushing to the side of the tanker.
There's a 2-second slosh cycle, so the milk sloshing backwards and forwards typically takes 2 seconds. This is a model of as true to life as you can get of milk actually sloshing in a tanker. It continues on for quite some time. Going through a roundabout, sloshes backwards and forwards. The timing is critical. If you pick the timing through a roundabout and your timing of speed, angle of attack and angle of departure is 2 seconds, you will roll over. Our animation shows that in an S-bend, the problem is we've got a dynamically moving centre of gravity. The slosh factor is perfectly timed to tip the truck over, all the weight's on one side. The other one we've got with a dynamic problem is a cement mixer or concrete truck. Agitators only run one way, anti-clockwise. That means all the material is packing up on one side. If you go around a left-hand bend with that material packing up on one side, you've got a bit of a problem because all your weight's on that side. The animation shows that at a roundabout, you'll come in under brakes, you're almost stopping, so the material moves forward and you've got the camber of the road to help you stay upright. As you go around, the weight's on the inside of the curve, helps you stay upright. It's only when you're exiting the roundabout, turning left, that you have the problem, because all the weight's now on the outside of the curve and it can tip you over.
Consider this scenario. You are driving a B double tanker set, your speed is 100 km an hour and you suddenly have to slow down, gearing down, applying the brakes, etc. Your load is suddenly pushing you forward, increasing your forward momentum, increasing your velocity and mass. Another example. You enter the roundabout from the west, you go around to the right-hand bend. To reach your exit point, you turn left to exit and we have the liquid sloshing around in the tanker body going one way and then the next. What would happen to the load and momentum if you had to execute an emergency braking manoeuvre? We suddenly have the extra force and momentum from the liquid wanting to push the vehicle forward, which could result in a vehicle rollover. We'll now discuss vehicle runoffs and overruns. A driving running off a hill or an overrun down a hill can be attributed to the driver not selecting the correct gear for the downhill run, considering the laden weight of the vehicle, forward momentum, etc. One of the most common causes of brake loss on long downhill grades is overheating due to failure of the driver to select a low enough gear or failure to properly use the auxiliary brakes. Overheating leads to brake fade in which case the brake lining completely lose their grip and no longer slow the vehicle. By following the safe driving practices, a professional truck driver never loses these conditions or allows these conditions to arise. Truck speed downhill should be controlled by the use of the engine, the gears and the auxiliary brakes. The manual brakes should be held in reserve for coping with emergencies, traffic conditions or sharp corners. Don't use your brakes to hold your downhill speed. Downshift to a lower appropriate gear or ratio. The only time you step on the brake pedal is to slow the vehicle while you are shifting down to a lower gear. By not selecting the correct gear, you are relying more on the manual braking system of the vehicle to control the speed. Constant use of the brakes on long downhill grades results in the brakes overheating due to failure to select the low enough gear or failure to properly use the auxiliary brakes. We'll discuss vehicle rollovers and the concertina effect. Consider the following. If we combine the factors of vehicle stability for a vehicle travelling at 60 km an hour through a bend, the overturning forces are 4 times greater than they would be at 30 km an hour. Damage effect is 4 times greater. And while concentrating on the vehicle stability, you would require about an additional 1.5 seconds to respond or react to a threat. So if you are suddenly forced to apply the brakes, you have the very real potential for a rollover. This can occur while travelling on a straight line on a straight road. You are driving a B triple while maintaining the crash avoidance space. You move a little too far to the left, your wheels drop off the road onto the soft shoulder. As you attempt to bring the vehicle back in line by suddenly turning the wheel, the whole combination will follow this line. This sudden change of direction can cause the vehicle or the combination to roll over or flip. With this in mind, why is it always the middle trailer that will be the one that rolls over or flips and not the rear trailer? Well, the answer might surprise you. Let's look at an AB triple as an example. We have the prime mover, the lead trailer, dolly, trailer-dolly combination and the rear trailer. You have the first part of the combination beginning to stop. The prime mover is pushing back against the lead trailer. The brakes are more effective and come on before the others, while the forward momentum from the rear trailer is wanting to keep and push going forward, pushing against the middle trailer. As such, that being the weakest point, that will be the weakest link in the chain, which is the one that will always roll over or flip in an accident. So we have two forces at work here, one that is wanting to slow down or stop, while the second, the heavier force, the rear trailer, is wanting to keep moving, pushing forward along the natural line of movement created by the direction of travel from the combination, applying force to the kingpins and pushing the middle section or the trailer out. Why the middle trailer? Because it is being sandwiched between the two heavier objects, it is following the line of least resistance and going out to either the left or the right. The effect will be magnified by, for example, if you had two dollies and additional trailers as part of the combination, creating additional pivot or multiple pivot points that form part of the combination. We'll now talk about kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is the energy contained in a moving object. The heavier and or faster the object is travelling, the more kinetic energy it will contain. A truck is relatively slow, but it is extremely heavy and also has the potential to do a great deal of damage over a large area because of the weight of the truck. The kinetic energy of a bullet when fired from a gun is either absorbed by the target or eliminated by friction as it moves through the air. The energy in a vehicle is converted to heat by the friction of the brakes when they are activated. The effects of kinetic energy increase at the square of the speed and have a major influence on all major vehicles in three particular sections. 1. Braking. The faster the vehicle goes, the further it takes to stop. For example, if a truck speed is doubled, it will take 4 times the average distance to stop. 2. Cornering. If a truck enters a corner at 60 km an hour, there will be 4 times more overturning or sideways forces on the vehicle than if it had entered the corner at 30 km an hour. 3. Impact. The damage to a vehicle and its driver at an impact in a crash situation will also increase at the square of the speed. In other words, twice the speed, 4 times the damage. 3 times the speed, 9 times the damage. C. A pedestrian knocked down at 60 km an hour will suffer 4 times as much damage as one knocked down at 30 km an hour. Think about that. Let's talk about overturning forces or centrifugal force. Centrifugal force causes passengers and loads to slide across a seat when cornering at high speeds and happens when a moving object changes direction.
I think for the driver, he's having to judge all of the factors around him to say what's the safe speed to enter this bend at. And he hasn't got a lot of references there to say that, no, you're very close or you've just gone over. And that's one of the biggest issues around in the industry. There's not a lot there to tell you just how close you are sometimes.
Except for gravity, the main forces that affect trucks come from their movement. Centrifugal force acts on trucks whether they're turning, even at parking speeds. It pushes trucks outwards, away from the centre of a turn. Discus and hammer throwers use centrifugal force. Motorcycles lean in against it as they're turning. Even a kid on a swing generates centrifugal force. It's that force that makes the discus, the truck, or whatever is going around to move away from the centre. Centrifugal force increases the faster you go, so the faster athletes can spin, the further they can throw. The faster you go around any given turn, the greater the centrifugal force is pushing you away from the centre of the turn. Of course, trucks are in contact with the road, and the tyres tend to grip to stop them from sliding. They don't stop the force, they just counteract it. But the top of the truck is in contact with anything. So just like the triangle, you push at the top with enough centrifugal force and it will roll over.
Obviously, speed comes into it. There can be other circumstances that, it can be an unusual load, it can be a top-heavy load, it can be just a nasty corner with a bit of a dip halfway around it, and you might get away with it every other load, but a particular load that's got a few other contributing factors come into it. If you're just pushing it just that little bit, you go.
When you're going around the corner, if you change your angle of attack or any sort of steer, any sort of correction, that force is amplified because you're changing the angle. It's not just about the speed, it's the two things to give you the centrifugal force. Here's a good example of that, where the guy has driven down the road and has corrected, thinks he's okay, and then overcorrects again, and you can see it is not much at all. He's corrected, corrects again, and he's gone. That's purely centrifugal force, nothing else.
The weight of a vehicle means that when travelling in a straight line, it will attempt to continue in that direction, even when the driver turns the steering wheel. Changing the direction causes the vehicle's weight to move to the outside of the turn, which, unless the driver controls its speed, can lead to a rollover or sliding out. Centrifugal force is affected by the turn of the square of the vehicle and the turn radius. In other words, the faster the vehicle is going and or the tighter the turn, the more likely the vehicle is going to driver is going to be to lose control of the vehicle and a rollover. We'll now discuss stability. Of the factors that can influence the vehicle's tendency to roll over, the following are the most important to consider. The vehicle's speed when entering a corner, the cargo's height, the vehicle's track width, vehicle suspension, the condition of the vehicle's tyres. If all these factors are maintained at an acceptable level, the vehicle will remain stable. The risk of loss of control and rollover will increase if they are not considered. Rollovers typically happen during cornering and sudden evasive steering manoeuvres. Are you actively applying and displaying low-risk driving skills? 1. Select a gear low enough to slow the vehicle down without the constant use of the brakes. 2. If you miss a gear, stop the vehicle with the brakes immediately. Then select the correct gear. It is very dangerous to coast while you struggle to find the right gear. Use auxiliary brakes to help control the vehicle's speed. Reserve your service brakes for coping with emergencies, traffic conditions or sharp corners. Try to brake on straight sections where possible, as this reduces the chance of skidding. Avoid fanning or repeatedly applying and releasing the brakes, as this has a tendency to lead to increase in brake temperature and failure due to brake burnout. In air brake systems, fanning wastes compressed air. As a professional driver, you must at all times display low-risk driving techniques. Only drive when you are alert. Respect other road users and know how to control your vehicle. Driving is never risk-free, but you should aim to drive low risk. A low-risk driver has good observation, speed management and road positioning skills. In summary, speed compliance. The speed compliance provisions of the Heavy Vehicle National Law place duties on parties in the supply chain to take all reasonable steps to ensure that their business activities, schedules or arrangements do not cause heavy vehicle drivers to exceed an acceptable speed limit. These requirements complement existing chain of responsibility provisions for mass, load restraint, vehicle dimension and fatigue management, and apply to heavy vehicles with a gross vehicle mass of more than 4.5 tonnes. There is a specific duty on 7 off-road parties to take all reasonable steps to ensure that their actions do not cause drivers to exceed the speed limits. These parties in the chain include employers, prime contractors, operators, schedulers, loading managers, consignors and consignees. It is the performance of any of these functions that determines whether a person falls into one of the above categories rather than the job title or description. In addition, a person may be a party in the chain in more than one capacity or category. This is the end of the course. We'll now progress on to the assessment.